Back on Shabbos.
You tie it once.
Tie it once, that's right, that's correct. Now, why would one not tie it with a bow? Why is that not recommended? Why should you not tie it with a bow?
This is not,
Why should we not tie it with a bow?
it's not permanent, but we can take it. Like we can do it, it's not 24 hours.
That's correct. Usually when someone ties up the garbage, at the end, they do not untie it and then retie it after Shabbos. Usually the way when you garbage, you usually you leave it as is. So we are concerned that even though halakhically you are permitted to tie it with a knot and a bow, however, we are concerned that someone might forget to untie it and then leave it that way. So that would, it's not recommended. So the proper way to do it would be, as you said, tie it once, and after Shabbos you would do it the other way. Now, what would be some other things that even though halakhically you are permitted to make a knot with a bow? So first of all, making just a bow by itself and you're going to leave it indefinitely, is that an issue? Just making the bow without a knot underneath. No. So we said tying once, it's fine, even if it's going to be left indefinitely. So this is permissible, it's not considered tying at all. So this is fine. Now, you're just going to make bows.
You want to use the water bottle?
Thank you. Thanks. Okay. We're going to see how it works. This is not very pliable, this rope. It's like it doesn't, you have the white rope that's more, it holds better. This one is like, unless you tie it properly, it's not going to hold. So going like this. Okay, what happens if I leave this indefinitely? Permissible or not?
Yeah.
Hmm? Because there's no knot underneath to stabilize it. This is the same as tying it once. It's just, instead of, what you see is the two bows, but just by pulling it, the whole thing comes apart. It's not the same as tying a knot first and then bows. So then it would be permitted to make our bows just to make bows by itself without a knot underneath is permissible. And then you can make a bow on a bow, on a bow, on a bow, without a knot, a first knot, that all would be permissible. You just pull it and everything comes apart. So making a lot of bows is okay without a knot underneath. However, what about if we have the knot first, and then our bow. Okay, this we said has to be opened up in 24 hours. Now, what happens if I want to make a knot on top of this? Sometimes the shoelaces come apart, coming apart, especially with small children. If you make a knot on top of the bow, is that permissible?
No.
This is already just like a double knot. You had a knot underneath, you had the bow in between, and then you made a knot on top of that, that's going to hold. That's the same as two knots. So therefore, that cannot be done. What you could do is make a bow on top of a bow that will give it more stability. It will be the same as one bow that will hold the shoelace. Got it? Okay. So just over here we have, once I'm going to pull this, nothing is going to happen because I made here now another knot on top of it. This is going to hold. Okay, so you saw what I did? So I made the bows, and on top of that, I made another knot. That's going to be holding it, and it's not going to come apart. So we could make many bows, one on top of the other, as long as there is no knot underneath, that we could keep going. So let's see. Without making the knot, I'll just make the bow. Okay, then I can make another bow on top of that. So this is permissible because there's no knot underneath. With this rope, it just comes apart by itself, but there would be the white rope that would hold. And I can make bows on top of that, and that would give it stability, but it's permissible because I just pull it and everything comes apart. It's just the same as we made with our slip knot. Same with also with our slip knot, okay, this you could also leave indefinitely because it's not considered a knot. You just pull it and it's open. So slip knots on top of slip knots, those are all, just pull one and everything comes apart. This is all permissible in Shabbos, and that's the permissible way. So there's something that usually is left permanently. We would not make the knot with a bow on top of it because even though you're thinking of opening it up within 24 hours, however, if it's something that you usually don't do, then we're assuming that you will forget. So let's take an example of you have a dress and you have a bow that you have the belt that you want to tie the dress, especially with small children. You have the ones that are with belts in the back. They're sewn on the halfway. So that you could make a knot and a bow because you're going to take off that dress. You're going to open up the belt. However, sometimes you have ribbons that are sewn onto the dress. They're for decoration, and usually you leave them as is. Only that when you wash them, they come apart. So then they would open up. But other than that, since it's for decoration, there's no reason to open them up each time you're going to use it. What you usually would do is make the bow since it's sewn onto the dress, and that's a decoration, and you leave it that way. So therefore, one should not make the knot with a bow, rather just make the bows. But the same would be also with a tie. This tie is made, you can make it two ways. One would be a slip knot, where you can make it on Shabbos. Others are made such that you have to open it. So that again depends on your lifestyle. If you open up your tie each time you're going to use it, when you're taking it off, you open it up, take it off, then when you put it on, you would wear it again, you make the bow again, so then you would be able to use it. If, however, you just make it once and you just open it up and take it off, put it on without opening it up at any time, so then you would not do that on Shabbos unless it's a slip knot to begin with. So my tie, I do not open or close on Shabbos. I leave it as is before Shabbos and leave it that way. Mm-hmm. So this one is not a slip knot. This is not a slip knot. This is one that holds. And therefore, I make it before Shabbos and wear it and don't open it up until I change my tie.
But you can loosen it and then.
I can loosen it. Yes, there's no.
Okay.
It's fine, but you don't. You can take it off. You don't open it up. So. Now, what happens if you do have your shoes, you tied your knot with a loop, with a bow, and then it turns into a double knot. What do you do then? What do we do? We say a double knot is permanent, holding, is considered like a craftsman. So you cannot open up a double knot. So what happens if it happened to your shoe? Any suggestion? Let's go. Oh, yeah. You sleep with your shoes, what do you do?
You stay on the shoe?
What?
Stay on the shoe without putting on the knot?
See, if you could slip your foot out and you have other, but again, when you want to wear them again, are you going to be able to do the same? Okay, so in that case, since your intention was to make a bow, not a double knot, and you are in discomfort, but you do want to take your shoes off, and you have, these are the shoes you want to wear the next day, you don't have anything else to wear, so you would open up that double knot. Since your intention to begin with was not to have it a double, and it's discomfort, so then you have that leniency to, your first choice would be to just slip it off and slip it back on, but again, you have that choice since it is discomfort. Now, the garbage bag you should make it just tie once. Once. We'll keep the odor out. It's fine enough. After Shabbos, you'll tie it properly. The Shabbos do not make the knot and the bow, because even though it would be permissible, you open it up in 24 hours. Usually, when people tie a garbage bag, they leave it as is and usually forget to open it up. So, okay. We have our challah. You go to the, now we have this twist tie. Now, among the malachas that we spoke about was separating threads or something that is tying. So we do consider this to be like tying, by twisting it, having the metal that is there, it twists it, it ties it, attaches it. Now, in the bakery here in Albany, what they were instructed, whoever is doing the twisting on Friday, what they tell them is just to go around it and hold it. They did nothing, just wrapping it around. So then there was no issue in opening this up on Shabbos, because nothing was done to be considered the tying or untying. Another thing that you could do is only cross it once. And then wrapping it around, you did not twist it a second time, you just crossed it over, and then wrapped it again. This is going to be stronger. This again is permissible to open and to close the same on Shabbos. What we're doing, but we're not twisting it.
So twisting is considered.
Twisting it, so again, if something is twisted, you cannot twist it on Shabbos, you cannot untwist it on Shabbos.
Can't you open it in two on Shabbos?
But we do it, we'll figure out how to do it. So now let's see what we have now. We'll try to do it in a permissible way. So now I'm going to twist it. Okay, now we got our challah. We have it in the regular, completely twisted. So what do I do? I'm not going to untwist it. So my thing, what I do when I have something like this, what I do is I just pull the bag. Almost there. if you pull it back, the sides, eventually, what happens is, go there, go. And off it comes. So I have it still twisted, and I pull the sides until it came off. If that doesn't work because it's so tight that when I pull it aside, nothing doesn't rise up, I'm going to tear the bag. It's the bags I'm destroying. That's not a halacha. You're not allowed to tear on Shabbos, but if it's in a destructive way, it's not a halacha. Since we need the food, it would be rabbinic. If you're the tearing it in a destructive way is rabbinic, and since for food, the Rabbanan were more lenient about that you could tear it in a destructive way. So then I would tear the bag in such a way that I could not reuse it, so it's destructive, and then I have my challah, and I'll find a new bag for the challah that I've taken out. Mhm,
When you put the nylon tablecloth,
mhm,
I saw some places because they have the candles, right?
mhm,
So they tear around
Mhm.
the candles,
mhm,
and then they take
Mhm.
out the dirty
Yes.
tablecloth.
mhm. It's permissible. Again,
Permissible?
yes. So what I do is, knowing that we're going to be changing it, what I do is that I put down the candles to begin with on Friday, cut around.
That's smart.
That's what I do. And then you just lift off. So after already the candles have burnt out, and I want to change the tablecloth, you just lift it up, and the candles stand in the same place. What's going to be done is when you cover up when you put on the new tablecloth, it's going to cover up the candles. So that spot you will not use. You could see the candles are there because it's sticking out. That's what's done in my shul. So we have someone in charge of the shul that there are candles on Friday night. They use the table. So there's someone who on Friday puts the candles with a little tray on the table, cut around it, and then when we want to change the plastic tablecloth, you just lift it up, and it's fine.
So you can break it with that.
What?
You can break it without it's open.
Yes. If you want to get for the food, it's going to be a leniency again because of food and because we're doing it in a disruptive way. So normally we cannot destroy, you cannot just go and tear bags. But since it is for food, so the Rabbanan to begin with, when they said not to do it in a destructive way, they put in that for certain needs. So that was established into the prohibition that under these circumstances, this is something that could be done. This was put in as a part of the halacha. An existing double knot cannot be tightened. So even though it's been there already, but if it became loose, pulling it again would be as if you are tightening it for the first time. That would also be with tzitzis. You have double knots at the end of the tzitzah, and usually every morning we tighten it again. It is a double knot, but on Shabbos we would not tighten it. We just check to see that everything is good. By holding it over here, not to tighten, and then checking to see that all the springs are intact. Okay. That's pretty. I think we covered everything in this chapter. Any questions on this? So again, we said tying a knot at the end of the rope, that is the same as a double knot, that's permanent, cannot be done on Shabbos. And not to do anything that normally at the end you would make a knot at the end of the article. Let's say, take for instance, we're going to speak about blowing up balloons on Shabbos. According to the opinion that you're allowed to blow up a balloon on Shabbos, but you can't. Usually, at the end of the balloon, what do you usually do? So the air not to escape, you usually make a knot. Then we would not blow up a balloon on Shabbos because we're concerned that you are going to make a knot because that's the way you do it whenever you have a balloon.
But isn't it one knot?
One knot at the end of one, to the
No,
end of
but
it, to the end, so taking over here and making one knot here. This is like a double knot because once you pull it tight, it's not going to open it. The same thing on the balloon. You usually would make that one knot. Therefore, unless it's a balloon that you have like a beach ball that has a plug, that would go into the, so those who permit it would have that plug. Only then would it be permissible, but not with a balloon, because we are concerned about that one knot. Any questions? Now we come to the next malacha, which is here, so okay. In the Mishkan, we're going through the making of the tapestries. So we started off with the shearing of the wool, and then washing and bleaching it, and then combing it out, and then spinning it, making it into the yarn, making it into threads, and then setting up the loom, and then the actual weaving, and then the tying. And now we learned that the tapestry were made in sections. They were made into 10 sections, 5 were sewn together, and then they were placed on top of the Mishkan with the connection of the two hands had the golden hooks, and they were placed right where the separation between Kodesh and Kodesh HaKadoshim. So how did they get the panels? So actually we have 10 panels, and we have to connect the 10 panels, and that was done by sewing them together. So now sewing is a malacha. So when is it a malacha? When you do stitching that should hold somewhat. So it's so again with the so depending how one sews, when you are sewing, what do you do when you put the thread through the eye of the needle? What do you do with the ends of the thread? What do you do with them?
Tie them.
You tie them. Okay. So now, in addition to sewing, having the malacha of actually when you're going to sew, even before you do that, one transgressed the malacha of kosher, because tying the two ends together with one knot, that is a permanent knot, and that is the malacha of kosher. So that even so, even before we start to sew, if one would tie the two ends together, that would be a malacha. Now the sewing itself, so having 2 stitches when the thread is tied at the end, it's not going to come apart. When the threads are not tied together, 3 stitches is going to hold. So whether you are doing it initially, doing the sewing with 3 stitches or 2 stitches, even if it's already been sewn, if what happens if the hem gets loose or a button becomes loose. So in the weekdays, if you were to pull the thread, what happens to the 2 ends of the seam? They come together. So even though you're not using any needle to pull them together, but the fact that you pull them, so now you have sewn the garment because they're now, the seam is now come together. The same is also with a button. The button is hanging. It is the thread that if you pull the thread, the button goes back to its proper place. Then you've sewn the button. So once you have a loose button or a loose seam, you could not on Shabbos pull the threads, but that would be as if you are initially sewing. So sewing is taking two ends and taking a third entity and attaching them both together. So we have the two ends of the cloth, and then we have a thread that's going to be the third thing that's holding the two sides together. That's the definition of sewing. Two ends with a third item in between. And therefore, we have those situations where that does not happen, it would not go into the category of sewing. So attaching two things with a third thing in between would go into sewing. And therefore, what would also be included would be a staple. We take two papers and they're two separate entities. And we're going to staple them. The stapler has to be replaced. It doesn't work. It almost worked. There are staples inside, I guess. Okay. Anyway, for demonstration purposes, there is a staple in here. So stapling it on Shabbos or undoing the staple, we have a Topher and Korea sewing and unsewing. So taking out the staple would go into this category. Another thing that are two things, the same idea as stapling, where we have two items and we have a third item that's going to put it together. That would be our Post-its. So we have what's keeping this together is the glue. And by pulling it off, I've unglued and then putting it on onto another piece of paper, and attaching it, then I have just glued it together. So this cannot be used on Shabbos. Now, you have a children's little item that has a lot of different ways of when they're trying to train the children of how to open up and close different things. You ever see a toy like that? It has buttons, it has zippers, it has Velcros, it has all kinds of different ways of attaching to things. So I'll try to get that for our demonstration class. I don't have that, but I've seen it. And anyway, so there we have that which would be permissible to use on Shabbos. So, buttoning on Shabbos, how is that? Are you permitted to button on Shabbos? But yeah, buttoning.
Yes.
Why? Okay, so it's meant to be opened and closed. It's not meant to be attached. When we sew things together, they're meant to attach it and leave it there. That's what the idea of sewing is. The button is meant to open and close, so therefore that does not go into that category, even though we have two ends and we have a third item that's keeping it together, but it does not go into the category of sewing. Then we have also another way of attaching two ends. What are other ways of how we attach things with clothes? Zippers, okay. So are we allowed to use a zipper on Shabbos?
Yes.
And when we're going to analyze, how does the zipper work? Is it two ends having a third item that's attaching it together, or is it between the two items themselves, they're interlocking? So two ends are interlocking by themselves. We don't have the idea of sewing. It's not a sewing idea because to sew, we need a thread that's going to keep the two sides together. Here you have just the zipper is interlocking one with another, and there does not go into the category of sewing to begin with.
You do need the little piece.
There's nothing there that, no, look at it, look how the zipper works. It's just interlocking one with the other. There's not a third item.
Together, it just.
You one interlock one to the other. So when the zipper first came out, the rabbis had to analyze and see what are the properties of the zipper, and they said, that's fine. What is another way of keeping two ends together? What else do we have?
Safety pin?
Okay, we'll come to safety pins. Come to there, but before that, we're speaking about that which is common. What's another thing that keeps our clothes together? Velcro. Okay, Velcro. How does Velcro work?
Interlocking.
Interlocking. You have the hooks and the other side that you hook one into another. So that would be also permissible because it does not go into this category of sewing to begin with. So again, you have to analyze what is Velcro, and they came to the conclusion that it's not sewing in any way. Now, what do we do with our safety pin? Okay.
Do you have like a push pin like on a corkboard and you like hang things up?
So that would be like, that's attaching, yes, that would go into a, oh, I did not know I had my, actually went this morning to the bakery to get it typed and I didn't know I had it in my little kit. Okay. So, okay. Now, I have here two safety pins, large one, the small one. Now, we do have this is going to keep the two ends together. It does have that sewing property. Can we use a safety pin on Shabbos?
Yes.
So it depends how you're using it. If you're using it as a button, it would have the same property as a button because you put it on and you're doing it in order to open and close it. You're going to, if I put now a safety pin, I'm going to not leave it. I'm going to then open it up. So therefore, taking the two ends together without going through inside, just going like this, closing it. So this is permissible. So I could do this because I'm using it now as a button. I'm not leaving it in any way. I want to, I'm just, now it's a substitute for my button and taking it out. So make the substitute for a button is permissible. So I did it the way I did it is because it's meant to open and close. Now we have when we are going to be doing the two ends together or putting the seam together with the, where I'm going to, now I'm going to do it this way. This already, I'm especially going to go this way. Now I closed it. I've done actually a repair job with it. If I put this on the seam that the hem that came out, are we going to leave it that way or not? So again, it matters about, if I had the small one is more likely that it will be left. Because I can make it that should not be visible, and I would not be self-conscious about walking about something with a pin because no one sees it, it's there. The same thing would be now if it be something that is visible, I would certainly not leave it there, and I would take it off. So again, the permissible way would be just to go through one end and attach it to the other end, and then close it. That would be the way to go. Doing in a way that that you are making more repairs. So again, this is something that's controversial. Is it something that if it's opened up 24 hours, is that sufficient? Is it the same as tying or not tying? So that again becomes controversial. So therefore, our class recommends it only to go through one side and then through the other side. Yes.
So closing a button would be fine then?
Again,
Closing a button would be fine then?
close the button, using it as a button, this would be fine. The other way is making repairs. That is something that's controversial. You would have to, the question is it the same as tying? We said tying and opening it up in 24 hours is permissible. If it's not done a professional way, it's not done a professional. But does that apply also to sewing? A temporary sewing, is that considered sewing or not? The strict opinion is that it is sewing, even if it's for a short time, that's called sewing. So we said going through in and out, that's already a sewing activity. Now, we don't have time. Okay, next class, what we're going to do is speak about Band-Aid,
Oh.
and then we're also going to speak about. But the idea is, again, we have the tabs that we are concerned about. It's not the diapers, it's the tabs that we're concerned about. Is it permissible or not? So we're using this as for demonstration purposes, and then it applies to other things. Another thing that would also apply is our tape. Cannot be used on Shabbos. Again, we're attaching the tape, has the glue that's underneath, attaching it to the surface. That would be the same, goes into the category of sewing, because we have one thing, and the glue that is putting them both together would go into the category of sewing, just like the sewing needle. Okay, we will. Okay.
No, he's like. He said.
Let me have again the names. There are those who I know. Again, your name is
Laura.
Laura. Laura
Laura.
Kaminsky. Okay, Laura. And let's have the name. Yes, and again, your names. Again, your names.
I'm Alex.
Alex. Okay, so welcome.
Nina.
Nina. And your name again is
Valeria.
Valeria.
Yes.
Okay. I should remember that.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. A couple of announcements. First one today during lunch, the last 10 minutes of lunch, there's a meeting about Pesach for all the dorm girls and any students that are going to be in Crown Heights over Pesach. Okay. Thank you. The other thing is I printed out the lunch menu. If it's possible to go through it and check the foods that you eat, and you can put an X on the foods that you don't eat. And maybe put in a different suggestion there. We want to make the menu work for everybody, okay? And it has to be, like, it could be reasonable, like, it doesn't have to be your favorite food, you know? Like, if it works, if it's, you know, you tolerate it type of thing. You know, put it in like a suggestion that actually you might take some combination.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so random.
Otherwise,
No one else does this. Never else does that. For girl skating. But I've asked so many people this question, no one knows. Are you allowed to use the breast pump on Shabbos?
It's not electrical. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and are you allowed to keep this?
So
for
then,
longer?
again, one would have to do with that which is expressed. So that would be technically, so then we have to dump it.
Okay. Or if it's there to feed the baby and you can feed it.